Haven't featured Wood Elves on the channel too much since the DLC came out, just because I played them so much in Early Access, but today I want to talk about Treekin specifically. I know I've talked a bit about them before in the rework when they got Vanguard and a significant weapon strength buff, but I'm a big fan of Treekin to help kind of sustain any sort of, Wood Elves line, given that their other units are very squishy. You can sort of use them as a tanky frontline infantry, Monstrous infantry even. Today we're up against the Tomb Kings. Actually decided to get some random ladder battles, so one of the few times I've done that. I've got a bunch of Dryads, the Dryad Lady, Dryka leading the way. We're going to summon up some Dryads in just a second. Got some Zotes coming in off the side, 1 unit of Zotes, 4 Deepwood Scouts, a couple of Glade Captains, which will be very key. My opponent here, Casket, double Screaming Skulls. He's also got Eyes of the Desert, 2 Bishopti Great Bows, so quite a bit of, quite a bit of range pressure, which is an interesting choice against the Wood Elves, definitely, but will it end up paying out? Get a nice Penumbral Pendulum there to break up some of the skeletons. Nice thing against undead factions is their stats are generally low enough that the Treekin aren't going to take, even with the melee defense nerf, they aren't going to take much damage, and now with 86 weapon strength, you can definitely punch back against these Skeleton Warriors. Only 22 defense on them, 26 attack on the Treekin, and nice thing too, that magic attack, a little bit of lag there, I don't know what that was, but yeah, the physical resistance of Liber Mortis obviously will not help at all against any of the tree units, as they do all have magic attacks. Another great thing about Treekin is the charge defense against large. You can sort of use them in a defensive role to block cavalry charges or other, pin other monstrous units in, and being able to negate the charge of something is certainly very valuable. But Screaming Skulls, throwing the big old meme skulls everywhere, doing a decent job, although my Deepwood Scouts are mostly still alive. Nice Fate of Boring there. Take that one out, but the summoned, frenzied, malevolent Dryads have been pressuring Chosen the Gods to take a lot of damage, and this is super cost-effective for me. Not necessarily free unit, you do pay for the summon, but relatively free unit. Just getting some great damage and pressure there. And the Treekin are more or less unopposed in the front line, even against these spears here, skeleton spears. They're still going to do just fine because of that 90 armor. That allows my Deepwood Scouts to kind of just sit back, like over here too. The 2 Glade Captains move in, they're both on foot. Anti-large armor piercing, going to deal with this Tomb Scorpion, and the trees just provide mass. The Treekin, they just provide kind of some mass, pinning him in here, making sure it's a little bit harder for him to move around and operate. It does have those big splash attacks, but another Penumbral Pendulum, going to hit some of my own Dryads probably, but also help do a number on those spears, and the spears will do some damage to the Treekin over time. Well, obviously with the anti-large, they'll do a bit. But it's not too impactful, especially with the lack of AP there. Really, the only infantry you'd have to worry about from Tomb Kings in terms of Treekin fighting them would be Tomb Guard with Halberds, right? Obviously. But Summon Shabdi comes up. It is actually able to route my Zotes off, so Tomb King player is still fighting tooth and nail. He's got this Screaming Skull online. This other Screaming Skull over here had been peppering with the Deepwood Scouts. It's now crumbling, but it is actually going to recover its leadership and continue to fire there. But just put the Deepwood Scouts on fire at will at this point, just whatever they want to shoot at, as the Treekin and the Dryads kind of grind through the front line here. Of course, it does help as well having those Blade Captains with their passive melee attack, melee defense buff. You can see the Treekin up to 31-51 with those stat buffs. Quite nice, 51 melee defense in particular. Again, they just kind of outlast the skeleton units in this particular matchup. I don't know if you could out-attrition, say, like vampire counts, but Tomb Kings don't play the attrition game quite so well as some of their undead counterparts. But Malevolent Dryads just pressuring the Bishopti Great Bows has been massive value train for me as well. Huge fan of that ability on Dryka. I wasn't too, high on Dryka. I guess she kind of flew under my radar a little bit in the early access, but she has proven to be an exceptionally good add for Wood Elves. Really a lot of fun to play around with. Arkin the Black still trying to summon up skeletons wherever he can, but at this point things are getting pretty thin. My Dryad summon also disappears there, and Dryka's going to take some MLG shots to the face, try and get her second tier of anger proccing, basically. See if we can't get some more AoE buffs and so on, but yeah, the Treekin, just kind of wanted to point out, as tanks, they're doing a great job. This one unit here finally gets kind of crumbled, but the rest, I mean, we've got basically full health unit of Treekin here, more or less full health unit of Treekin over there, like not necessarily full health, but still 12 models on both of them. Quite impressive stuff. The Zotes come in for a nice pitch late game. Enfeebling Foe on the Eyes of the Desert. Livre Mortis again, not really going to help much as the Zotes also deal magic damage. And the Zotes also use that armor buff on themselves, get a nice little heal. Of course, Sepulchral Stalkers do have armor piercing damage, but just to mitigate maximum, that I can here. Also might be firing in a little bit of incidental shots with the Deepwood Scouts. Want to mitigate friendly damage as much as possible. Yeah, as the Desert gets shredded in that engagement there. Again, the melee attack buffs from Drika definitely helping. Up to 45 and 40 in terms of stats there for the Zotes. Pretty good stuff. And more Treekin just moving in up the flank. Yeah, awesome stuff. The fact that the trees all have Vanguard too means that it's kind of like an aggressive defensive unit, which I'm a big fan of. Like, in your face, and then just bog you down. I don't know. It's interesting, certainly, having all the trees be able to Vanguard. Zotes come forward. They're going to pin down these Shabda Greatbows. At this point, it's more or less a mop-up operation. My opponent has done a great job protecting his casket, but it hasn't used hardly any of its ammo, because he's been kind of maneuvering it back and away from my forces, which preserved its value, but didn't allow it to really shoot much. You can see the tree can allow the Blade Captains to kind of clean up there. Just providing the mass, and honestly, the damage value is not really necessarily what you bring these guys for. They're still more tanks than anything else, but they can get some damage now, whereas previously it was just, you basically bring them as a terrain piece. But yeah, pretty decent damage overall. Not a ton of damage value, but again, they're basically completely healthy. You can see the Dryads kind of got torn up. They get some okay damage value as well, but the Treekin able to just hold the line, allow these other power units to get their work done. Deepwood Scouts generally doing quite well. Rika also, of course, with their summons. 2 Glade Captains, decent considering they're on foot. They don't cost too much with that kit. Zotes also didn't really pay for themselves in terms of damage output, but get some healing and so on as well. So well played to my opponent there. Definitely a fun one. Yeah, going with this much shooting against Wood Elves can be a bit risky sometimes, but yeah. The Shabda Greatbows, one of them paid for themselves, one of them did not. The Scorpion was also a little bit of a rough run against the 2 Glade Captains there. Glade Captains are pretty decent characters, and just foot characters in general are decent against Tomb Kings, right? So I kind of put 2 and 2 together there. But anyway, let's talk about Treekin. In terms of Monstrous Infantry, I'd have to go back and look. I don't remember exactly what Monstrous Infantry videos. I know I'm planning to do Chaos Spawn relatively soon. So we're going to be covering more of these guys going forward, but just to kind of start the comparison out, at 900 points, Treekin are probably one of the tankier. Between their armor and their melee defense, they might be the tankiest of any Monstrous Infantry. Obviously, Tomb Kings, direct comparison, we have Ushabti, right, which certainly deal more damage in terms of armor-piercing damage. Where are they at? Here we go, 900 points, so exactly the same cost, same armor. Treekin actually have more overall weapon strength now at 86, and better stats, 3 better attack and 11 better melee defense. That 11 defense definitely makes a difference. Not to mention Vanguard, charge defense against large, a little bit of physical resistance too, so they're tankier in not just the defense, but also that. A little bit more HP as well. Definitely less damage dealing against armored infantry, but just the fact they can hold out so well, especially in a faction that lacks that kind of tankiness as a general rule. To have something that fulfills that role is just awesome. Monstrous Infantry, probably one of the best things about it is mass, and this is something that's true, especially for factions which can struggle against monsters. Having the ability to have these guys kind of pin in, especially lighter monsters, characters on horseback or flying mounts especially, able to just pin them in with Monstrous Infantry is definitely something that's worthwhile. But in terms of comparison, the Chaos Spawn just deal way more damage. Overall weapon damage. They're also unbreakable, which is nice, but super squishy in terms of HP and armor and melee defense. I guess HP is actually exactly the same. But it's interesting, especially for the Beastmen ones in particular, because they also suffer no forest penalty, but they don't have Vanguard, of course. There is the weakness to fire also, as all units do have, something to consider for Treekin. But as kind of a middle-of-the-road Monstrous Infantry, not necessarily meant as a damage dealer, but more as a tank, they definitely offer a lot of upside. While they don't have passive regeneration like something, say, like Trolls, I believe their leadership is quite a bit better than Trolls. If we were to take a look at, say, Stone Trolls are 1100, so that's quite a bit, not quite a bit more expensive, 200 points more expensive, but Yeah, 70 armor instead of 90. They have the magic and missile resistance, which is nice, but no physical resistance. They do have regeneration, so they're both kind of weak to fire, right, because of that. Extra 14 melee defense in particular, and just extra HP overall in the first place. Definitely offers a lot of upside. Zone Troll's obviously a little bit of a different rule. You kind of take these guys as a damage dealer directly, whereas Treekin are not so much in that role. But just to kind of compare other tanky, quote-unquote, monstrous infantry, right? Like, you also have Armored Chaos Trolls, which are a bit of a wild pick. You don't see these super often, but they are good in a couple matchups. And yeah, 110 armor on those Trolls is pretty impressive. Still only 32 melee defense, though. And no charge defense against large. So really, the tree can offer a lot of speciality, but at the same time, you can use them in ways that you would use other monstrous infantry, you know, for mass blocking and for some damage dealing against light infantry and so on. So hopefully you guys enjoyed watching. I know it's been a while since I've covered Wood Elves, so there you go. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification every time I upload a new video. You'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.